44 here on the Radio Wammo Breakfast. Time for Beer Aware with Steve Plowman, the captain of beer at Hallertau. Welcome back, Steve.
Well, thanks, Wammo. Nice to be back.
Each week going through the various beer styles with an example from overseas and a local example as well. Last week we were doing the dark lager. Today we're on to the Bock, or just Bock.
Bock beer, which is still a lager, but a different style of lager. It's a very old style of lager, back to the 14th century. And it's all about the malt character and the alcohol. So your traditional Bock's sort of around that 6 to 7%, and then your Doppelbock is up around sort of 7, 8, 9%. And
I imagine the most familiar to New Zealanders would be the Doppelbock through Belgian beer type joints.
Yes, well, and also Monteith did Doppelbock a few years ago,
yeah.
Which actually wasn't a bad beer. But then they dropped the alcohol down, so technically it was only a Bock, but they still called it a Doppelbock.
Okay, so Bock with low alcohol, and as you go up to one called the Ice Bock.
Well, yeah, so you start off the Bock around sort of 6, 7%. The Doppelbock is sort of 8 or 9%, and then the Eisenbock is up around 12%. And that's where they get the Doppelbock, and they actually freeze it. So the water freezes, and that concentrates the alcohol and the flavours. And they're pretty intense.
Is that what they call cold filtered? Is that the same thing?
No, cold filtered is just a made up, stupid marketing phrase. Because when you're filtering, it has to be cold.
Okay.
You filter cold, you know. Otherwise, you want the proteins to stay in the filter.
Yeah.
So cold filtered beer is marketing bollocks.
And what would you notice about a Bock initially?
Well, they're characterised by a lack of hops. I mean, their origin is from, a long time ago, before the advent of things like thermometers and temperature control. It's back when German brewers used a mashing technique called decoction mashing. Whereas these days you tend to mash at a single temperature, or you use temperature control to step up your mashes to specific temperature rests.
Yeah. To
get the enzymes and the proteins working. They had a decoction mash whereby they'd have a mash at room temperature. They'd remove a third of the mash, and boil it, and then add it back to the mash. And they'd do that up to 3 times for a triple decoction. And the reason being is they knew if they removed a third of the mash, got it to boiling, added back, would raise it by a certain temperature every time. So they could do a step mash process without the need for any thermometers or temperature controls, because they didn't exist, in the 14th century.
Of course.
And that process produces a lot of caramel character out of the malt, makes them very rich, intense, malty, smooth, oily, and silky, which is the characters which characterise this style of beer.
Okay, and what is the international example you've got today?
Well, I couldn't find any German examples, which is disappointing, but we've actually got a South African. It's from Namibia.
Wow.
It's the Windhoek Brewery in Namibia, sorry. Having a slow day today.
I don't think I've ever had an African beer.
Well, no, this is quite. You do see they do a nice lager as well. It's a German brewery set up in Africa, which is quite odd. But they do produce some really nice beers. So that's the example that we've got today.
And are they on the traditional side of the Bock, or?
This is a traditional Bock.
Okay. So
it is described as a Bock, which is traditional Bock beer. Brewed only using barley hops, water, 6.2% alcohol. So it's a very traditional Bock. Let's have a look at it.
Originated in northern Germany in Einbeck, which was a brewing centre and popular exporter in the days of the Hanseatic League, 14th to 17th century, they say, they reckon. Would you normally serve this room temperature?
No, you'd probably serve this the same temperature most European beers are served at, sort of 6 to 8 degrees, which is warmer than most New Zealanders would drink their beer, but cooler than most English people drink a cask beer, around 10 or 12 degrees.
Quite brown in colour?
Yeah, nice brown, nice copper, a little bit of tan head on it. Aromatic is, again, a little bit aged. What's the date on this sucker? It's best before now as well.
Is that?
May 2012.
Sort of old socks on the nose?
It's a little bit musty, yeah. It's not that nice. But there is, you're getting that maltiness back in there. There's some nice rich caramel. A little bit of toasted cocoa in there somewhere. Maybe. Not a huge amount, though. quite smooth on the palate.
It's actually quite nice.
It's actually quite nice, eh? That's a good example of Bock. It's not a lot of hops. There's just enough hops there to bring the balance back in, but you're getting a lot of rich, toasty, malty characters. It's almost like some sort of oat sort of biscuit character in there.
Yes.
Some nice sort of sweetness coming through. But the finish is pretty clean. You're not actually picking really an oxidation on the palate so much.
Almost Anzac biscuit in there.
Anzac biscuit? Yeah.
Do you think that, because even though this one's past its use-by date on the bottle, unlike the lighter lagers that we've had that have been past the use-by date and not been so good, that use-by date is not so important for this one because of the extra maltiness?
Yes, and because of the alcohol as well.
Right.
I mean, in beer, alcohol is a major preservative, so more alcohol, the beer will last better. Some of those darker roast characters.
Could it even get better with age?
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a debate at the moment. You know, does beer get better in the bottle? Most beer doesn't. Some beer does. Bigger, darker beers will actually improve with time and develop in age. You can put some of these beers down. So I think that beer is actually still looking pretty good.
I quite like that. Good drop. That was the Bock brewed in, what did you say? Namibia.
Yep.
Wow.
What's the brewery called? Windhoek Brewery, which
Nice.
it's a big brewery in Africa.
Okay.
They make a lot of beer.
Now for the local example.
So the local example is the Harringtons. It's a Doppelbock. So this is a little bit. This is the higher alcohol version of the Bock, 8%. What are they saying about it? Traditional German formula, wak, smooth and mellow. Nice. Let's have a crack at this.
What do you make of the Harringtons Brewery? It's been around a wee while now, isn't it?
Harringtons has been around quite a long time. They make a lot of beer. They make some pretty good beer. But they do produce, I think it's about a dozen, maybe 14 different beers.
They were sort of, I mean, they were crafty before crafty was crafty in New Zealand.
They've been there a long time. Yeah.
But now I gather they've had to get more crafty because the other crafters have got more crafty.
Exactly. The craftiness of their range is increased to the point where they've got a good... But they're originally famed for their Nahiri Gold.
Yes.
7.2% lager, which
Yes.
in my university days resulted in some pretty impressive hangovers.
Many a tour de coma out beyond Lincoln.
Yeah, well, I was popping up from Dunedin for the weekend in Christchurch, straight to Harrington's, rig of Nahiri Gold. We're going to have a good night.
I think my first introduction to Harringtons was their icebreaker. Are you familiar with?
No. Oh, the alcoholic lemonade. It just tastes like lemonade, but I can't stand up.
Exactly. That was fairly dangerous stuff as a student. But anyway.
So this is actually lighter in colour. So this is probably moving towards the type of Bock. It's called my Bock, which is a lighter coloured Bock. They tend to make them in May, hence my Bock means May.
Right.
The Germans are very seasonal about the brews they do. There's different types of beer for different times of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So this is pretty more like a Maibock styles with that sort of, just that rich sort of goldy amber sort of colour.
Definitely more on the gold than the brown.
Yeah. It's quite attractive colour though. Oh, that smells pretty good.
It's quite light on the nose compared to
the You're
Bock.
not getting those sort of more intense sort of malty characters. It's sort of a bit of honey.
A little bit of hop.
A little bit of hop, yeah. Which is probably not that good for the style, but still quite pleasant.
Smells like that Kiwi hop, the New Zealand hop.
Mm. That's actually pretty good.
Fresh.
Quite tasty. The alcohol's really nicely integrated. You're not picking on that at all.
It's not really strong maltiness, though, is it?
No, so this is more this Maibock style, which tends to be a little bit fresher and a little bit hoppier. I mean, but again, this is Harrington's interpretation of the style, and they've sort of made it a little bit more new worldy, a little more hop up front, but it really is lacking that sort of big fat malty mid palate, which you come to expect this style. But still, it's quite pleasant. The drinkability is really pretty good.
It is nice, but if it was to be judged in that Doppelbock range officially in the World Judging Competition, Beer Awards or something, it would fall out of favour in that particular category, surely.
Would lose a lot of marks for out of style.
Yeah,
Trying to shove it in that Doppelbock box, you'd lose marks for colour, the aroma's not right, and the palate's too hoppy and not malty enough.
It's still a nice beer.
It's a pretty nice beer.
Yeah.
I could recommend this on a cold winter's night.
Well done, Harringtons. Well done to you. Okay, so we've just been looking at Bock with 2 examples there, and now if you just tuned in, or you want to share this around, you can in video form up at kiwifm.co.nz, the Radio Wammo show page link. Also, say g'day to the captain of beer out at Hallertau, just out west of Auckland.
We've got some new beers on. We've just put on our Nora Luca, which is the champion homebrew beer from last year that we brewed.
Oh, what flavour?
6.5%. It's sort of like a Belgian Grand Cru styles. Golden, a little bit of wheat, nice fruity phenolic. And we're about to release, we did a barrel fermented Saison. So we fermented in 11-year-old Sauvignon Blanc barrels.
Yeah.
And we've put a little lactic acid bacteria in the well to give it some nice creamy mouthfeel, and that's starting to look pretty good.
Nice. And will you be reintroducing the Winter Minimus again?
No. I like the Summer Minimus.
Just keep that on.
Winter Minimus. Yeah, it was interesting, but the Summer Minimus is just so tasty at the moment.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Tasty.
Recommend that. So thank you very much, Steve.